Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Gopijana Vallabha Girivaradhari Jaya Gopijana Vallabha Girivaradhari Yashodanandana Braja Janarandana Yashodanandana Braja Janarandana Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jayam Vishwadaparam Hamsa Parvajikacharya Asatarashata Shishimati His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jayam Vishwadaparam Hamsa Parvajikacharya Asatarashata Shishimati His Divine Grace Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Goswami Maharaj Ki Ananta Koti Vishwavanda Ki Grantaraj Shrimadbhagavatam Ki Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna. Welcome to ISKCON Detroit morning Shrimadbhagavatam class. We are going to be reading from Canto 1, Chapter 1, Text 31 today. Before we get started, we'll just say a quick prayer as well too. And make sure the computer is on. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
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 Narayam Namaskritya.
Narayam Namaskritya.
Naram Cheva Narottamam.
Naram Chaiva Narottamam.
Devim Sarasatim Vyasam.
Devim Saraswati Vyasam.
Tato Jayamudirye. Nashtaprayeshu Bhadreshu.
Nastaprayeshu Bhadreshu.
Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya.
Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya.
Bhagavati Uttama Shloke.
Bhagavati Uttama Shloke.
Bhaktir Bhavati Neshtaki.
Bhagavati Naistiki.
Hare Krishna. So welcome. It's great joy to be starting the day reading Srimad Bhagavatam. So much wonderful knowledge comes from here. And today's verse is actually very, very cute, very special, very interesting. So it's also very long. So the bookmark. Not in its place. Oh, yes, sorry. Oh my God. Okay. So reading again from Canto 1, Chapter 11, Text 31. Patnaya patim Patnya pratim prasha granupagatam.
Patnyaya patim brosya grahanupagatam.
Vilokya sanjata mano mahatsavaha.
Vilokya sanjata mano mahotsvaha. Utastur arat sahasasana shayat. Utastur arat sahasasana shayat.
Sakam vritirvidita lochanananaha.
Sakam vritirvidita lochanananaha.
Patnaya patim prashaya grahanupagatam.
Patnaya patim prashya grahanupagatam.
Vilokya sanjata mano mahotsavaha.
Vilokya sanjata mano mahotsavaha.
Utastur arat sahasa sanashayat.
Utastur arat sahasa sanashayat.
Sakam vritirvidita lochanananaha.
Sakam vritirvidita lochanananaha.
Patnaya patim prosya granupagatam.
Patnaya patim prosya grahanupagatam.
Vilokya sanjata mano mahotsavaha.
Vilokya sanjata mano mahotsavaha.
Utastur arat sahasa sanashayat.
Utastur arat sahasasana shayat.
Sakam vidita lochananana.
Sakam vritirvidita lochananana. Patnaya patim Patnayapatim prosya grihanupagatam
Patnayapatim prasyapatam
Vilokya sanjata mano mahotsava
Vilukya sanjata mano mahotsava
Tasturat sahasa sanasayat
Dastadurat sahasashasanjayat
Sakam vrite vridita lochananaha
Sakamatir vidita lochananana
Patnyapatim prosyahanupagatam
Patnyapatim prasyahanupagatam
Vilokya sanjata mano mahotsava
Vilokya sanjata mana mahotsava
Uttasturat sahasasanasayat
Dastadurat sahasashanasayat
Sakam vrita lochanana
Sakam vrite vridita lochananaha.
Hare Krishna. So we will read the word for word. Pranaya. Patna, the ladies, wives of Lord Krishna.
The ladies, wives of Lord Shri Krishna.
Patim,
Patim,
husband.
husband.
Roshya,
who was away from home.
Who was away from home.
Gra anupagatam,
Grihanupagatam.
now returned home.
Now returned home.
Vilokya,
Vilokya,
thus seeing.
thus seeing.
Sanjata,
Sanjata,
having developed.
having the
Mana Maha Utsava,
Manamahotsava,
a sense of joyful ceremony within the mind.
sense of joyful ceremony within the mind.
Utastuhu,
Tastu,
got up.
Gata,
Arat,
Ara,
from a distance.
from a distance.
Sahasa, all of a sudden.
Select.
Asana,
Asana,
from the seats.
from the seat.
Ashayat,
Asana,
from the state of meditation.
from the state of meditation.
Sakam,
Sakam,
along with.
along with
Ritai, the vow. Vidita,
Vidita,
looking coyly.
looking cold,
Lochana,
Lochana,
eyes.
eyes,
Anana, with faces, with such faces.
such faces.
Hare Krishna. So translation and purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Translation. The queens of Lord Sri Krishna rejoiced within their minds to see their husbands home after a long period abroad. The queens got up at once from their seats in meditations. As was socially customary, they covered their faces shyly and looked about coyly. Please repeat. The queens of Lord Sri Krishna
The queens of Lord Sri Krishna
rejoiced within their minds
rejoiced within their minds
to see their husband
to see their husband
home after a long period abroad.
home after a long period abroad.
The queens got up at once
The queens got up at once
from their seats in meditations.
from their seats and meditations.
As was socially customary,
As was socially customary,
they covered their faces
they covered their faces
shyly
shyly
and looked about coyly.
and looked about coyly.
Purport. This is a long purport, so bear with me, but it's a very nice purport, as always. So, as mentioned above, the Lord entered his home palaces occupied by 16,108 queens. This means that the Lord at once expanded himself in as many plenary expansions as there were queens and palaces, and entered in each and every one of them simultaneously and separately. Here's another manifestation of the feature of his internal potency. He can expand himself in as many forms of spiritual identity as he desires, even though he is one without a second. It is confirmed by the Shruti mantra that the Absolute is one alone, and yet he becomes many as soon as he so desires. These manifold expansions of the Supreme Lord are manifested as plenary and separated portions. The separated portions are representations of his energy, and the plenary portions are manifestations of his personality. Thus, the personality of Godhead manifested himself in 16,108 plenary expansions and simultaneously entered into each and every one of those palaces of the queens. This is called Vaibhava, or the transcendental potency of the Lord. And because he can do so, he is also known as Yogeshwara. Ordinarily, a yogi or mystic living being is able to expand himself at most to 10-fold expansions of his body. But the Lord can do so to the extent of as many thousands or infinitely as he likes. Unbelievers become astonished to learn that Lord Krishna married more than 16,000 queens because they think of Lord Krishna as one of them and measure the potency of the Lord by their own limited potency. One should know, therefore, that the Lord is never on the level of the living beings, who are but expansions of his marginal potency. And one should never equalize the potent and the potency, although there is very little difference of quality between the potent and the potency. The queens were also expansions of his internal potency, and thus the potent and potency are perpetually exchanging transcendental pleasures, known as pastimes of the Lord. One should not, therefore, become astonished to learn that the Lord married so many wives. On the contrary, one should affirm that even if the Lord marries 16,000 million wives, he is not completely manifesting his unlimited and inexhaustible potency. He married only 16,000 wives and entered in each and every one of their different palaces, just to impress in the history of the human beings on the surface of the earth that the Lord is never equal to or less than any human being, however powerful he may be. No one, therefore, is either equal to or greater than the Lord. The Lord is always great in all respects. God is great is eternal truth. Therefore, as soon as the queens saw from a distance their husband, who was away from home for long periods due to the battle of Kurukshetra, they all arose from the slumber of meditation and prepared to receive their most beloved. According to Yajnavalkya's religious injunctions, a woman whose husband is away from home should not take part in any social functions, should not decorate her body, should not laugh, and should not go to any relative's house in any circumstances. This is the vow of the ladies whose husbands are away from home. At the same time, it is also enjoined that a wife should never present herself before the husband in an unclean state. She must decorate herself with ornaments and good dresses, and should always be present before the husband in a happy and joyous mood. The queens of Lord Krishna were in meditation, thinking of the Lord's absence, and were always meditating upon him. The Lord's devotees cannot live for a moment without meditating on the Lord. And what to speak of queens, who were all goddesses of fortune, incarnated as queens in the pastime of the Lord at Dwarka. They can never be separated from the Lord, either by presence or by trance. The gopis at Vrindavan would not forget the Lord when the Lord was away in the forest cowherding. When the Lord, boy Krishna, was absent from the village, the gopis at home used to worry about him, traversing the rough ground with his soft lotus feet. But thinking thus, they were sometimes overwhelmed in trance and mortified in the heart.
Such is the condition of the pure associates of the Lord. They're always in trance, and so the queens also were in trance during the absence of the Lord. Presently, having seen the Lord from a distance, they at once gave up all their engagements, including the vow of women as described above. According to Sri Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakura, there was a regular psychological reaction on the occasion. First of all, rising from their seats, although they wanted to see their husband, they were deterred because of feminine shyness. But due to strong ecstasy, they overcame the stage of weakness and became caught up with the idea of embracing the Lord, and this thought factually made them unconscious of their surrounding environment. This prime state of ecstasy annihilated all other formalities and social conventions, and thus they escaped all stumbling blocks on the path of meeting the Lord. And this is this perfect stage of meeting the Lord of the soul, Shri Krishna. Jai. I'm just going to read the translation, or we'll read the prayers in the translation. Jai. Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurumilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeyam Shri Guru Shri Yukta Padakamalam Shri Guru Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sagana Raghunatam Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Prijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Deva Shri Radha Krishna Pada Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakam Shar He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dina Bandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vishabhanustute Devi Namani Hari Priya Vanchakalpa Durubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhaivacha Patitanam Pavnebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namah Namo Vishnupadaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Iti Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Vashata Deshatarine Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasadi Gaura Bhaktavinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Krishna. So we'll read the translation one more time. The queens of Lord Sri Krishna rejoiced within their minds to see their husband home after a long period abroad. The queens got up at once from their seats in meditations. As was socially customary, they covered their faces shyly and looked about coyly. Hare Krishna. So, what a long, beautiful verse or purport. There's many topics that are actually covered in this particular purport. But we will try our best to just have a little bit of understanding. Srila Prabhupada was very great in giving us all this knowledge. So this verse, or this chapter, as we've been talking about, describes the queens of Dwarka. Now they've seen Lord Krishna coming, from a distance, and they became overwhelmed with this transcendental love, right? This is not ordinary love that we experience here in this material world. This is transcendental love. It's a different level. And although externally they look like they restrained themselves by etiquette and modesty, their hearts were completely absorbed in him, and their love was very pure, it was very intense, and beyond any material expressions we can relate to here in this material world. So it's a very beautiful verse because this particular verse, it reveals the inner consciousness of Krishna devotees, actually. And specifically, we're going to see the examples of the queens of Dwarka. So the first idea from this, or the theme coming from this particular verse, is the fact that so Srila Prabhupada explains that although these queens were very eager to see Krishna, they could not express their emotions so freely, right? Because they were very shyly, they covered their faces shyly, and they were very coyly. So why is that? As we read this purport and as we learn about the queens of Dwarka, we understand that they're very cultured ladies, right? They were very chaste. This word chastity comes quite up. And they were following what they call a social etiquette, right? Now, externally, they're showing very nice composure and stuff. Because for anyone who's experienced someone who's gone away for a long time, and the first time you meet them again, or even the anticipation of meeting them again, there's so much desire, anxiety, so many emotions that come up within inside. But yet externally they were very composed, but internally their hearts were melting with the love of Krishna. So it's really they're restraining their love externally, but how it is flowing internally. So this is, the queens were basically, as we read in the purport, they were in a state of social dormancy. No need to go get ready, no need to go places, don't go see your relatives, all this stuff. So they were sitting there, right? Sitting and meditating on the Lord. Because these were things that are done, getting ready nicely, to go places, things like that. They only did that for the pleasure of the Lord. And now the Lord was not there, so there was no need to do those things, right? So all they did was, in their mind, they continued to think and be in this trance of meditation of Krishna, taking shelter of their intense separation. So they observed the customs, yet they were fully attached to Krishna, so they did not have any interest in doing any of the other stuff. So social conventions these days, practically speaking, they're pretty absent. People don't know unfortunately nowadays, proper etiquette is not very either followed or taught, or basically followed and taught, right? Like a lot of these social conventions that we see. Even for example, coming into the temple, what is the first thing we do? How do we interact with devotees? What is the thing, how do we stand in front of the Lord? How do we act? So many things are there. How do we honor prasadam, right? These conventions are not, and etiquette are not necessarily practiced, unfortunately, or they're pretty much deteriorating as Kali Yuga starts progressing. So, interestingly enough, these ladies, the queens of Dwarka, we can learn from them these social etiquettes. There's also other stories in the Bhagavatam in regards to this. One was the story of Kashyap Muni and his wife Diti. So she had a great desire for union with her husband, right? But unfortunately, it was during a very inauspicious time, a really bad time. So, and she was very, very much desirous of this. She was really into it. So, but Kashyapa, right, Muni, he was not, because he was very much self-controlled, and he knew that this was not a proper time to have that particular union. But instead of blasphemy or blaming his wife or, yelling at her, what he started to do was to glorify what a chaste wife is. So if we read this particular pastime, it has very nice information of what it means to be a wife, a chaste wife, and gives the information of that particular position. So Kashyap, in the purports of Srila Prabhupada, it says that a chaste wife is like the commander of the fort to protect individuals against uncontrolled senses. basically the husband. So it's a very great asset for a husband to have a very chaste wife. We learn the importance of these grahastha marriages, right? Nowadays, unfortunately, people marry for love and attraction or physical attraction and so on and so forth. And then thus, after a few years, it ends in divorce, right? And stuff. But this is not, again, not how it should be done, right? So if one can find a pious wife who assists her husband in these religious duties, right? It's actually, she's called in the Shastras the better half of the body of the husband. So we actually hear like this, wording is thrown around a lot. This phrase is thrown around a lot, like, oh, she's my better half, or, like that. But it's actually rooted in Shastra, right? And stuff. So this whole thing came from this particular pastime, where the better half of the body of the husband. So it wasn't meant to be a joke, as it is sometimes used now, right? Oh, let me ask my better half, and stuff. But there is a root of this particular thing, and that is that a qualified chaste wife has such a great asset to a husband, because it allows him to perform his religious duties. It helps against, uncontrolled senses, which we know is the root cause of so much disturbance and stuff. So she can be the source of the power, behind the husband. And this is something that's not a new concept. This is given to us within the Vedas. So when it comes to protection, right? So if there is a chaste wife, when it comes to protecting, right, we protect what's valuable, right? Like if you have some gold or a lot of money in the house, right, you're going to protect it, put it in a safe and so forth. So whatever we value highly, like different heirlooms or whatever may be in the family, stuff that might be passed on generation to generations, those things are put like in a protected area. Now, because a chaste wife is also valued so much, we have to think of this like from a positive perspective. This is not to like shun or, kind of bring down any individual, but because of the value of having a chaste wife, right, these women are protected, right? So it's because she is valued so much that she is protected, and thus following these different social conventions, right? To be shy is not a negative thing, right? It's actually a very positive thing, and so forth. To be coyly, all these things, right? To be modest. It's not, unfortunately in this day and time, there's very little modesty, but actually the modesty, the chastity of a woman is extremely powerful. So these qualified chaste women have the ability, and have the power to help bring about goodness within society as well. So they should be protected. They should be valued. As we, in the story of Kashyapa, the better half of the body of the husband, right? So this great value, this asset that she represents, unfortunately in this day and time, kind of, women are unfortunately exploited and so forth. Marriages that aren't based on what truly, religious principles and morality and so forth. So sometimes these things are just unfortunately gone. But we see that these queens of Dwarkas, we can learn quite a bit from them and how to be, as a woman, how to be a good wife, but also from a male perspective, how to treat a woman, and also, how to be in a relationship with the woman as well too. So another thing too, so the important thing about having that is that we can see that their pure devotion does not depend on external show either, but that it's an internal absorption, right? Internally, how are we thinking, behaving, and so forth when we come see the Lord? So we know that Krishna sees what's in our heart. He's there within our heart, and he knows what's happening. So these queens, right, They may not have gotten up and ran towards the Lord, shouting, "Oh, Krishna, Krishna," and stuff. But Krishna fully understood their love, right, within their hearts, because he's residing there. So in Bhagavad Gita 10:10, Krishna says, "Tesham satata yuktanam bhajatam priti purvaka." So those who worship me with love, I give them the understanding by which they can come to me, right? So Krishna is Bhava Vigrahi. He accepts the mood and not the external display. So we see a lot of this within this purport right here, right? It's not, some people, and even sometimes unfortunately in the community, a lot of people judge a book by its cover. But this is explaining to us, like, someone may be externally, and look like a senior, put tilak on, dhoti, all kinds of stuff. But how is it internally, right? How are they progressing internally? So even in our own practice, even if we're quiet, even if we feel imperfect, if our sincerity is there, Krishna will accept it, right? So what is it in our consciousness? That's why it's called Krishna consciousness. So from a cultural standpoint with these queens, visiting these queens again, so like when this attachment to Krishna is there, these cultural manifestations will actually manifest very naturally and stuff. So for example, the shyness of the queen, if we are internally thinking of Krishna, that we're this servant of Krishna, that he's the source of our, we are to be the source of his pleasure and stuff, and we only do things for his pleasure and stuff, this automatic, like this shyness, this behavior will start manifesting. We don't see, we build this humility, right? And stuff. We don't need to be loud and proud and all kinds of things, but we work very hard for the service of Krishna, for his pleasure. It was interesting too, because it'll come a little bit later in this chapter, so I won't talk too much, but as an example, like if you think of a pressure cooker, right, and stuff, like outside, it's just in its form, its pot, it's fine, right? But internally, there's so much going on, like there's so much pressure building up. So that's kind of like these queens, right? From outside, very shy, very coy, very proper, very modest and stuff. But internally, they're like, all this pressure is building up. They want to run, they want to embrace. They haven't seen Krishna in so long. They're like, very much building within their hearts and so forth. In fact, in this verse, it's the word mahotsav is referred to. It's like a festival, right? Like we think of like, Sri Krishna Janmashtami Mahotsav, right? It's a festival. So they're having this internal mental festival within their hearts of like what it would be to be with Krishna again, right? So it's like, but on the outside, very structured and stuff like that. So to have this self-restraint also is very powerful. It is also very, not so easy to do and stuff. So having the self-control, the self-restraint, so much so that the queens later in the chapter will hear that they actually send the sons to go and embrace, like go meet your father, right? So they send the sons first, and the sons will go and they'll hug Krishna and everything and stuff. And through that emotion, they themselves feel as if they were embracing Krishna himself. So how they express their hearts through their sons is also, again, not easy to do, but how to, express those feelings in a very culturally, in a very chaste and very modest way. So finally, so going back to like devotion, advanced devotion is very actually deep and sometimes even silent, right? When we look at some of these advanced devotees, they're not cheap. They don't artificially display, modes of ecstasy and, unfortunately now in Vrindavan, it's hard to tell and stuff, unfortunately, and stuff, people become very attractive, especially with social media and stuff, when there's an external display of ecstasy and so forth. Oh, look at this, look at this. But really, the relationship between Krishna and yourself is a very internal thing. We each have an independent relationship. He had 16,108 wives, but each one of those relationships were independent, right? And stuff. So this love for Krishna, this meditation for Krishna, this internal festival for Krishna is very deep, right? And the devotion is also very steady. Just because Krishna wasn't there, they weren't like, okay, bachelor time party, husband's not at home. You know, it wasn't like, unfortunately in America sometimes, you know, people will, wives will go out and go party with their girlfriends when the husband's not home, right? It wasn't like that, right? They were very steady in their meditation of Krishna. They did that because anything they do is only for the pleasure of Krishna. So they kept their emotions controlled by intelligence, with humility, and they were very steady in their service. So, you know, whether it's clothing, speech, expression, all of these things, we do with faith, we do with humility, we do with steady service, and so forth. So, you know, it's, you know, yeah, husband goes away, or like even nowadays too, like with festivals, right? They have like St. Patrick's Day, or like some of these festivals that are actually grounded in either religious principles, or they came from, you know, Shastra, or like, and so forth, but they've turned into these wild parties, right? Even like sometimes in India during Navratri, right? Or Durga Puja and stuff. It's like all night wild parties, all kinds of things that are happening and stuff. So, unfortunately, even like during like, you know, Gaur Purnima, like when you go sometimes to like Mayapur, it's such big crowds. You know, people coming from everywhere. It's perfect for pickpocketers, right? To come and like, oh, there's so many people here, right? Like, and stuff. But the real spiritual purpose behind it gets lost. So we have to be, you know, really take to the message of the scriptures, really understand what we are celebrating, how to do it with proper etiquette, with proper social conventions, and so forth. So, and hearing from Shrimadbhagavatam helps us in this, right? As we study, as we hear these from Shrimadbhagavatam, from the previous acharyas, when we look at the examples of the chaste women within Shrimadbhagavatam and so forth, and these stories, we can learn how we're supposed to behave, what is proper social etiquette. And these things are not, you know, oh, today's time and circumstances are different, right? Of course, they're going to be different, but some of these things are very, if you look at a chaste woman in today's time, she's an extremely powerful individual, right? And stuff. So some of these principles are not subject to time. So, and if we look also towards like the happiness within the home, right? The woman carries such power in how the home is established and stuff. So again, protection of the fort. So basically, in today's, you know, purport, although it was very long, you know, we can see that the queens of Dwarka were always sincerely serving. We can also learn to sincerely serve. How we control our senses, you know, nectar of instruction, so many things teaches us how it's important to control the senses and stuff. And this cultivating the inner remembrance of Krishna throughout our day. We do our chanting in the morning, right? That's a relationship you're building between you and Krishna. How much are we remembering throughout the day as you're doing different activities and so forth? Are you doing it for the pleasure of Krishna? So remembering him. So Srila Prabhupada always emphasized that this bhakti is not sentiment. It's not, oh, I love Krishna, let me make a like Valentine's Day heart for him. You know, it's very regulated, it's very steady, and it's very it's purified by knowledge, right? It's not something that we make up. So this is kind of what I had today. If there's any thoughts or comments or questions, please forgive me if I misstated anything and so forth. But
thanks for the very good the part was full description of chaste wife and like how she has to be and how because it's important to lead a healthy house, healthy family, and it's a responsibility of wife and nowadays it's like degrading or a precarious situation.
yeah,
Like, I don't know how it's gonna be, but yeah, devotees like getting a devotee is
yes, and I feel like sometimes there's a stigma out there, like, oh, if I'm not very forward, or if I don't dress to attract like the opposite sex, or if I don't, do certain things and stuff like that, like I won't be loved or noticed. But in fact, being chaste, being modest can be very attractive, right? And so forth. So like, this thought process, unfortunately, but the more we can learn from Shastra, the more we can preach these things, the more we can set an example as well too, and stuff. So don't be afraid. Be chaste and modest. It's a cool thing. You get a lot of power from it. So look at these queens.
yeah.
So, but yes, thank you, Prabhupada. I know it's very long purport, but Srila Prabhupada, even in Bhagavatam, there's so many examples of such wonderful grahastha, how to live in a grahastha life, right, and stuff like that, and what the power that the female, the wife, has within the home to help the husband and to make him successful. That's where the partnership comes in, right? So, yeah, that is a partnership. Not like, 50-50, you do dishes and I do this. That's not 50-50. So, anyhow, thank you. Hare Krishna. Grantaraj Shrimadbhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Ananta Koti Vishnu ki jai. Hare Krishna.